Morgan, and today I'm excited to share my thoughts on The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes by Suzanne Collins. And just a heads up, this video may contain spoilers for this book as well as the original Hunger Games trilogy. I did read the original trilogy, I think about a dozen years or so ago now. So yeah, I really, like, The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, like, it filled me with emotions. It like made me think a great deal, and it's like I have so many thoughts I want to share. And first of all, it's like Sejanus, like he was too good. He was too good for the world of the book. It's like Sejanus was like, honestly, he's my favorite character in this entire book. Like, I know that like he wasn't like one of the, like, how do I put this? I know that, like, technically Coriolanus was the protagonist, but Sejanus is just, he grew on me so much because he has a literal, like, just so much goodness in his heart. Like, he has a heart of gold, as the saying goes. Like, his heart is just so good. He manages to stay, like, he stays true to himself to the point where it gets himself killed. But it's like, in a world that is deeply like violent, he is just like a pacifist at heart. Like, he always wants to see the good in people. He's willing to stand up for what he believes in, even if it will get him executed for treason. And that's why I love Sejanus. Like, he is an extremely brave person. I think to an extent he's braver than Coriolanus, because Corio will rat out his own best friend in order to keep himself alive, whereas Sejanus is someone who, it's like, he will stay true to what he believes in, to what he believes is good, even if it will get him killed. So it's like, I love Sejanus. He's, to an extent, he's just like, he makes really dumb, stupid, bad life decisions, but he does it out of a place of goodness. So I love him to absolute pieces. And when he died, it like literally, like, it tore my heartstrings. Like, it just made me, like, I was trying so hard not to cry when he died, because it's like, he's just. And then when like the mockingjays, like the birds just start saying like ma 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 over and over again. It's so sad, because it's like, his mother, like Mrs. Flint, is just, she's so sweet. She's such a sweet human. Like, she's someone who I think just wants a peaceful, good, happy life for herself and her family. And so it's heartbreaking, because Sejanus meant so much to her and vice versa. And it's hard. Like, we've spent so much time getting to know Sejanus, and it just hurts. It hurts. And it's kind of like, I kind of, to an extent, see how Coriolanus Snow grew up to be so uncaring of a person, when it's like, he sees, like, not only is it that he sees Sejanus die in front of his eyes, it's that he is complicit in his death. He is, because I don't really see it as like, oh, Corio, like, literally killed him. He is complicit in the death. He isn't the only cause of it, because it was Sejanus's own actions that, like, how do I put this? Yes, Coriolanus was the one who ratted him out, but Sejanus was the one who was doing something that would technically be considered like illegal in the world that he lives in. Even if Sejanus was like really, like, even though I do think that, like, I don't think Sejanus did anything morally wrong, what Sejanus did would get him executed in the screwed up, fucked up world that he lives in. So it's like, I don't see that as being something that's inherently only Corio's fault. It's the fault of other people in positions of power within their society. Like, Dr. Gall is the one who probably gave the orders to get Sejanus executed. So it's like, yes, it's partially Corio's fault, but it's also like, okay, Sejanus's actions are partially to blame, and at the end of the day, I'd say it's like the fault primarily lies on Dr. Gall, as well as, like, yeah, there are greater societal problems. It's partly the fault of the society in which they live, but it is also Dr. Gall's fault, because she's the one who, like, she's the one who found out, like, she's the one who listened to the Jabberjays to find the message. So she is the one who has ordered Sejanus executed. So I feel bad that Choreo has internalized the fault for it, when it's like, okay, this is primarily Dr. Gall's fault at the end of the day. It is only partially Choreo's fault. And oh my gosh, that ending, like how that ties into like the ending. The fact that Lucy Gray trusts him so much, and then he screws up and mentions that, like, oh yeah, he's killed 3 people, and then he does not do a good job of brushing that off. Like, I think that's where Lucy Gray's trust in him goes, where it's like in the same way that Sejanus lies to Choreo earlier on, it's like Choreo has lied to Lucy. And so she's picking up on the fact that, like, hey, something is very wrong, and then she puts 2 and 2 together, and I think it's implied that she realizes that Sejanus' death was at least partially at Choreo's hands. And so it's like, I think the thing that makes it, like, so that irrevocably, like, Lucy and Choreo can never really be together is the fact that she put her trust in him and then he lied to her face. And also there's the whole issue of, like, yeah, maybe he's gonna try and kill me, and then he tries to kill her. That's also an issue. But I think it's like the just boldly lying to her is it's like it's a betrayal. Like, that's and yeah. I feel bad because it's like, to an extent, they're kind of star-crossed lovers, and it's like, oh, in another lifetime, they could have been together happily. There are so many ways where it's like, if things had just gone a little bit differently, maybe they could have been together. But then there's also the issue of they have extremely different core values, to the point where it's like, Coriolanus is from the capital. He's, like, imbibed the ideas and the culture and the world in which he was raised. And that culture is a very, very, like, violent authoritarian culture that kind of sees, like, the districts as less than human. And so, especially, like, if I remember correctly, at the interviews earlier on, it's like we have Choreo playing up this idea that, like, she's from the Covey, so she's not really District 12. But at the end of the day, she's not capital. So she's always going to be lesser than to Choreo. Even if he sees her, even if he's, like, doing what he can to see her as more human, it's like, she still is not capital. She's still never going to be respected as an equal in his world, in his society. So even if she managed, like, even if somehow things had been different, and maybe she'd been brought to the capital to work at a nightclub or something, then it's like she'd still kind of be a second-class citizen forever. And I think Lucy is someone who, it's like, she wants freedom. She values freedom, and that is not something that she can really get in Choreo's world. And also, she is not like, how do I put this? She isn't really a violent creature. Like, yes, she kills when she has to survive, but I don't think she would ever be happy even if she had been accepted to live in the capital. I think she'd be happier if just trying, like, basically how it ends is like, this is how I think she has the best chance of happiness. It definitely ain't trying to make something work with Choreo. It's, she's out there on her own trying to figure out, like, she's gonna have to figure out how to survive outside of the District 12, but it's like, she isn't from the districts originally. It's not entirely clear, like, it's not entirely clear to me how old she was when she was brought in, when she was captured by peacekeepers and brought to live in District 12. It's just not really clear to me how old she is and how much memory she has from outside that place. So it's like, it's possible that she could end up finding her way back to some other, like, other society or other civilization. But depending on how old she was and how much geography she remembers, it's like she could be basically on her own and stuck trying to survive for an extended period of time. And there's the chance that she might die. It's very vague. It's very vague what happens to her. And another thing that is kind of, like, sus to me is the fact that one of the things that's kind of sus is that she was refusing to take the weapons. And it's like, if you and Choreo had actually wanted to leave, you would take the weapons with you just because it would help you like shoot birds for food or whatever. Like the fact that she was so against taking the weapons, I think to me, like that signifies that she already, like she knows that Koryo's mind has changed. So yeah, I just, and what I'm trying to remember from the first trilogy is where exactly is District 13, because she is supposedly heading north. So depending on where District 13 is, we know District 13 is within walking distance of, like, if you escape District 12, it is possible to make it to District 13 eventually. So depending on how irradiated that is at this point, like how many years post-war it's been, has it been enough where the radiation isn't terribly bad anymore? Like, is it possible that she could find her way to District 13 and end up living there instead? I don't know how well, like, Lucy would do in a society like that, because District 13, at least by the trilogy, by that point, it's a very authoritarian society as well. Like, there isn't a lot of personal freedom in that society any more than there is in, in the districts. It's like, yes, they have a better quality of life, but it's still very limited what you can or can't do. And so I don't know if she'd really be happy in District 13 if she successfully makes it there. But that is a possibility. Maybe she could make it to 13 and live. But yeah, Koryo is a character I probably should talk more about. I empathize with him immensely in the earlier parts of the book, where it's like he's at risk of losing everything. Like, he's working so hard to keep everything together. But it's like by the end of it, it's like, oh my gosh, I see how he's warping, he's twisting, he's growing from his experiences in a very, like, gnarly sort of tree way, where it's like just instead of being like some beautiful plant, he's turning into some like monstrous being at the end. Like, I see his character development, and I think he's extremely well written. Like, it was a very interesting choice for Suzanne Collins to make him a protagonist, because this is a villain. He's definitely a villainous character. He's a villain. Yet I loved being able to see like his perspective, his growth, what made him into the person capable of doing immense bad. Like, the person who just does so many things that would be considered like evil or vile or terrible that he is in the later books. It's like we see him slowly turning into that over the course of the book. So I thought that was really a really interesting choice to write about him specifically, and I think she did an excellent job of that. Oh gosh. But yeah, I really did like him at the beginning, and at the end it's like, oh my gosh, I don't necessarily like him as a person, but I think he was well written. And I feel also a little bit pissed that it's like for a lot of the book, it's like I'm empathizing with him, I'm empathizing with him, I'm empathizing with him, and then it's like, wow, I really am starting to have questions about him and what his, like, it's like, I don't want to say, oh, he makes poor life decisions, because unequivocally, he made life decisions that advanced him in his society. He made, like, what would be considered good life decisions, despite the fact that they're completely evil, like, they're completely morally aghast, but at the same time, he's making decisions that are going to benefit him, that are going to benefit someone like his grandmother and Tigress, who are like his family. And it's one of the things that is so fucked up is the fact that Sejanus' death very, very much so helps Coriolanus, because he's being taken in essentially by the parents of his dead friend. And he has been made their heir in Sejanus's, like, the wake of Sejanus's death. He is the heir now. So he has saved him, like, he saved his family name, he saved his family penthouse, he saved his family legacy, and he's providing for his grandmother and Tigress. But it's screwed up, because here's the thing, one of the things that I kind of wonder is, like, do the Plinths actually know that Coriolanus ratted on their son, and to what extent would they forgive him for that if they knew? And also, it's kind of interesting to realize that it's like Sejanus' dad really would get along and does get along exceedingly well with Choreo because they have a much similar mindset from the culture in which they live. Like they get along exceedingly well, which is kind of scary. And one other thing that stuck out to me is Tigris. I finally realized, hearing like all the other Roman names in the capital, that it's like she's named after a river, isn't she? Like she's probably named after like the Tigris Euphrates or something like that, rather than when I read the first 3 books, I thought that she was just named like Tigris, as in like, oh, that's probably like a misspelling of the word tigress, like the cat. No, she's probably named after a river because that's like a Roman, like that's a word that would make sense to sound like, how do I put this? That would be like a Roman adjacent name. So yeah, one thing that I loved is like all of the Roman, like all the references to the Roman culture in it, because I see that as like, it's tying in to the greater realm of history, because it's like Rome was like one of the greatest empires of all time, yet Rome also had like really serious human rights issues. So I loved how it tied into Rome. And I love the setting, like the choice to set it in North America is very scary. Because it's like when I first read the original trilogy, I was kind of like, oh yeah, like this could never happen here. And then now, since like 12 years or so have passed since I read that, and it's like seeing the way that America's kind of progressed, I'm like, okay, I could see a future where we could end up with something like the Hunger Games, and it's like, oh crap. Like, America's not moving in the best direction. Like, I'm just thinking, like, we have like greater like wealth inequality than I used to think we did. Like, there are just so many things where it's like, wow, yeah, it feels like we're slowly becoming less of an egalitarian society and more of an authoritarian top-down society with great like structural injustices and stuff. So I'm like, wow, yeah, I'm a bit concerned about the fact that it was set in North America. It definitely makes me think about like America. Like, I don't want us to turn into the Hunger Games is all I'm saying. But yeah, I love too this difference of like the choice to contrast the capital with District 12 in one book. So we can see that even though Coriolanus like comes from an area where he has great luxury in some respects, like he still has struggles. He still has struggles to maintain his place in society, and he still was having issues with going hungry. And it was interesting to see how he was having to put up a front of acting like everything was okay to maintain status, compared to like District 12, where no one feels like they have to do that anymore because they all have hit rock bottom. So that way they're no longer like just trying to show themselves off as like, oh yeah, we're totally keeping it together. It was interesting to see the differences between those two societies, where the capital is still trying so hard to save face. And but it also was interesting to see like Coriolanus is definitely from an area still where he comes from a background of privilege and comfort, and so like seeing him realizing that he absolutely would never want to try and rough it was interesting, because it's like one of those things where it's like I kind of relate to him more than Lucy, and that it's like I would never be like, oh yeah, let's go rough it in the wild instead of trying to make it in civilization, because it's like with my health, like I die. But it's like Coriolanus is someone who values civilization. He sees his place as being in civilization. He wants to change society, not necessarily in a good way, but he's someone who's very much so from civilization. That's always where he's going to belong. Whereas Lucy Gray is someone who is interesting in that it's like she's willing to try and survive outside of the confines of society, which makes her an extremely strong person. But it's like interesting to see like how she just make different choices in Choreo, like to see what she's willing to give up to stay true to herself. And I feel bad for her in that it's like she has like no protections in the society in which she was forced to live. She's treated in many ways as like very, 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 very much so a second-class citizen, and that it's like not only does she face death, a threat, like threat of death from the Capitol, but she also, like, even once she survives the Hunger Games, she's at risk of being killed by the mayor of District 12. So it's like she has no protections in the society in which she's been forced to live, which I think is very, I think that's unfortunately a reality for many people, and it sucks to realize that, like, yeah, she really still is treated as a second-class citizen. No matter how many good things Koryo says about her or whatever, he's not doing enough to help her. It's like he cannot do much to help her or provide for her. Like, once she's back in District 12, it's like, yeah, he shoots one person, but then the mayor is after her, and it's like there's nothing he can do to protect her there. I feel sad because it's like I so badly want Koryo and Lucy Gray to have had like a happy ending or something, but it's like there's no way that even if everything had gone right, that they would have like been connected. They have such extremely different values and life experiences that it's like, I guess it makes sense that they turned eventually to like almost killing each other, because it's like they'd be on two different sides in a war. Like they don't have shared morals or values. They have extremely different cultures. It's like no matter how much they love each other, at the end of the day, Koryo is someone who is willing to kill his friends, essentially, or kill people he loves to promote himself. And that's something that Lucy is understandably not super into. So yeah, and it does make me think, like, because in the trilogy, the original, like the main trilogy, it's like, Katniss is having to pretend like, oh yeah, the reason I like almost ate the berries is because I'm in love, not because I want to frickin' live and stuff. So, okay, I did not really characterize that super well, but she was like having to play up the love aspect, and it's interesting realizing like this is what Coriolanus's view on love was, is that, okay, I also want to go into a little bit that I feel like Coriolanus doesn't necessarily love Lucy on a human level, because it's like he's specifically going out of his way to avoid talking with her about issues that he knows they don't really jive with, that they don't really agree with, they're not on the same wavelength on. So it's like, I feel like he sees her almost as like a picturesque version of herself and not as the real three-dimensional human that she is. It feels like and to an extent, I feel like through the narrative, it's like Lucy Gray is a little bit two-dimensional. Like there's so much more to her that we just don't see. And that is not at all the fault of the writer. I think that's intentional, that we're only seeing her through Koryo's perspective. And so there's a lot about her that we are barely seeing because Koryo's barely paying attention to it, and he's too busy focusing on like, oh, how much he just wants to kiss her instead of talking with her about, like, I don't know, her opinions on Pan Am. So yeah, and I do feel bad. Because it's like, I want Koryo to be happy, but he's happy at the end, just in a different way. Like he ends up it's implied that he marries, like, is it Livia? He marries one of the people at the school who, like, it wasn't even Lysistrata or Clemencia. Like, he isn't even, like, implying that he's gonna marry one of the sweeter girls who, like, kind of had empathy or anything. It seems like he's gonna marry one of the people who is, like, a complete and total hard ass, who's just, like, kind of not the most soft human being, which makes sense. Like, he's, like, Koryo has gone through a lot in his life, and it makes sense that he wouldn't want to be with someone who's super sweet or empathetic. He wants someone who's going to be a strong leader, because he's going to be the next president of Pan Am. And it's like, there were some things where it's like, I knew that Koryo clearly would have plot armor, because I remember from the sequel that he has from the main trilogy in the third book, he has a granddaughter, because he has a granddaughter who is going to be chosen to participate in some later games, which tells me like Choreo lives, and he ends up married to someone. But it's like, I was hoping he'd end up with Lucy, but I see why it could never work. But I'm a little irritated that he ended up with with frickin' Livia. Not even Clemencia, not even Lysistrata, Livia. Like, that pisses me off. And Dr. Gall is a jerk, but I kind of blame her in part for Choreo turning out to be such a monstrous creature by the end of it. And I feel like, I don't know, I feel kind of bad for Tigress, because it's like, I don't know what the falling out between her and Snow ends up being, but we know that, like, she and Choreo get along super well in this book, but by the third book, it's kind of, like, by the third book, we find out that she's related to him, and that she ends up siding against him, and helping the rebels, which tells me that it's like, Choreo and her must have had some sort of falling out, but I didn't get any of the details of that from the Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, and so I don't really know. I don't really remember from the third book, like, what the details of that were. So I feel bad that clearly something happened to lead to a falling out between him and Tigress, and I would like to learn more of that. Maybe she eventually, like, I don't know, I'm also like, Tigress always had a soft spot for Lucy Gray, so if she finds out that Choreo tried to murder Lucy Gray, and maybe that would cause issues, who knows. But yeah, I loved the world building. I thought it was extremely well done. It showed, like, I think it shows, like, to a great extent, like, how much society and a screwed up society can influence people and their beliefs and their morals, and just seeing people of, like, two completely different calibers, two completely different personalities. Like, I loved, like, Sejanus and Coriolanus. Like, those two are, like, they go completely opposite ways. And so, I loved it. I think this is a really thought-provoking and intensely, deeply thought-provoking book. I'm really glad I read it. I want to see the movie. I still want to see the movie. But, oh my gosh, this just tore at my heartstrings so much. And there was just so much that it's like, it was a roller coaster. It was a complete and utter emotional roller coaster, like, up and down all throughout. It was amazing, but it was heartbreaking too. So yeah, thank you for listening to listening to me share my thoughts on The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes by Suzanne Collins. I would recommend it. I think it's excellently written, and it's also an excellent example of, like, a book written from, like, a villain's perspective. So yeah, thank you so much for listening to me share my thoughts on this book, and I hope you have a great day. Bye!